Okay, we are on filmsgonewild.com. My name is John Wildman, and we are going to talk about the film So What's Freedom? We've got Andrei Zinca, the director. The film is screening at SEEfest LA, the Southeast European Film Festival. Andrei, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right, we start the segment by having our filmmaker introduce the audience to the film. They have not seen it as yet. So tell us about So What's Freedom?
So What's Freedom is, first of all, is a film that we shot in Romania in co-production with a Romanian company, and it's based on real events that took place in Romania at the beginning of the 50s when the communist government took over Romania. And the story is told from the perspective of today, though, because it's about totalitarian regimes, it's about freedom, and that's a subject that is valid as much today as it was yesterday. So it's a metaphor about search for freedom because our group of people are deported. It's based on the story of a deportation, one of the largest deportation in the history of contemporary Romania. More than 40,000 people were deported and left in a Romanian Siberia area. And that's where they actually found freedom because being isolated from the rest of society, they found that if they are able not to fear anymore, they can find freedom. So deportations are happening today also. Totalitarian regimes are today all over the places. The world in general, it's more divided than ever. And it's either you think like me or you're against me. It's valid, basically, law that was very, very strong in those times. So
well, I think one of the things that is such a truism and something that you do emphasize, in the film, not in the story of the film, but as it's framed, that this repeats itself over and over and over again, and it has repeated itself.
Yes.
Over and over and over again. And not just simply the idea that these regimes have taken upon themselves to try to move or even eliminate huge swaths of people. But in those moments, those people every time have demonstrated their resilience and their ability to persevere through the most harsh conditions and what's given to them, which is affirming, of course. But what I want to talk to you about is the filmmaking and how the subtle ways that you framed this and put this story across. And like as I was watching, the cinematography and the color palette, and and how we don't have vibrant colors, but they're washed out somewhat, because you're putting us in a mood to be able to accept what is going on. So I would love for you to start talking about that part of the approach, not the story, not the script, but actually what we're seeing on screen that affects how we take it.
Yes, unfortunately, my formation is as a DP. So that creates lots of problems because you cannot approach a story and tell a story. You just get into the visual aspect of it and you start thinking, how can you make that visual aspect to be part of the story? So basically, I identify three universes. It's the city universe where fear is very, very strong, and it's a society that is basically a society that was left in ruin by the war, and it's still in ruin because of the spirit that is inhabiting in that society. So for that specific universe, we decided that we go with a very cold tones and very washed out colors because we said, okay, what is the color of fear? What is the color of decrepit? And that's what we stayed with. And then you have the universe of the countryside where the traditions and the desires of living life in its fullest it's still there. It's the wedding. So that universe is full of color. It's full of color, and also the camera is moving differently from one universe to another. And the framing is different, and the lenses that we chose were different from one universe to another. And then that universe, the blood is sucked out of it when the deportation happens. And that universe all of a sudden becomes almost monochromatic. And they're put into the cattle trains, and they're taken, and there is a hope that maybe it's not going to be that bad, but because nobody knows what's going to happen to them. And then they find themselves in the middle of the Siberia. Let's call it Siberia because the name of the plane is Kuragan, but Siberia, everybody knows what Siberia is. Yeah. So they find themselves in the middle of the summer, right there in this open space, and that color, that journey starts with the almost black and white with a little bit of color left, because the blood, the life is taken out of them. So from that point on, they start their journey into this land, and as there's hope for life, the colors are gonna little bit go more saturated, and if that hope is taken away, so the color is gonna change as their lives changes. And at the end, when they finally make a life of themselves, of course, some of them died, as it happened in reality. Our group of people here with this poetic license, our group of people is 9 people. Actually, these groups were almost 3,000 people in each one of the communities that was formed there. And when they finally discover freedom and they create a life for themselves, they become a large family, that's full color. And when the news of their liberation, allowing them to return back to their original address comes, and they take that as another deportation, we come back to the same initial color that we had when they were taken there from the first time.
Right. The other thing that I was incredibly impressed by, Andrei, I have to say, was the subtleties and nuance that you got out of the performances of the actors. And it's not just in the performances, but it's in the writing and direction as well. And that is, especially with a story like this, and how directly we base it on history or not, we see it as a black and white issue. There's bad, there's good, there's villains, there's victims. But what is wonderful to me about So What's Freedom is that our villains, we see the weaknesses, and we see, and you allow us these glimpses through the performances you get, the edits, what have you. You get to see their frailties that lend themselves to as the famous the banality of evil, and then even with our with our core group that we see that has been banished to the Siberia, to the Baragon, even there, characters that normally or I would say too often we are given stock heroic characters. Even there, we see the nuances and the interplay between, like, the young lovers that you go, well, it's not perfect, and they're and they're going to have a struggle even though they've been reunited, I think you do this wonderfully, and I would love for you to talk about this again from your approach to make sure that you got that right.
Thank you so much. It's like you read my intentions very well. You're a great audience. So thank you so much. Each one of the characters is a symbolic character for a certain period of for a certain group of people. Coming from outside and not knowing exactly the history of those days in Romania, specifically in Eastern Europe in general, you get what you got, and it's great, because that was my intention. My struggle was being schooled both in Romania and here in the United States, and having lived here for so many years. My whole struggle was, how can I make a movie that is clear to both audiences, the American audience and the European audience, which is much more analytical, and they need to think much more. They don't need to have the information that an American audience needs to have. So each one of the characters symbolizes a certain group of people. Turica, the feminine character in the love triangle, the main character, symbolizes the intellectual that lost absolutely everything that was precious, and it couldn't find a place in the new world. And what they did instead, they waited for the Americans to come to save them from communism. And that's the story of the entire Eastern Europe after the war for the next 10, 15 years. And in the process, they died because the Americans never came. The love triangle. So the main character, Emil, who's the husband of Turica, is a history teacher and is a young sympathizer with a communist cause. But in the process, most of them realized what the truth was. And they felt betrayed, and they discovered a new way of living. The third partner in the third member of the love triangle, the railroad worker, actually is a Roma. So they were never, they were always free. That this kind of a nomadic life that they have was impossible for any kind of totalitarian regime. Like he says, the one before and the ones now, they could never stop them. So they're always free. And also the other ones are, so the people, all this large group of people that was deported was made out of minorities. And that's where the German and the Hungarian comes into play. And Romanians, and the Romanians that were deported were the ones that had more than 2 hectares of land, and therefore they're considered rich farmland owners. And they didn't want to give it was full policy of nationalization of the land, and they didn't want to give the land to the government. So therefore, they were deported. So each one of them has so many references in real life that I knew. That part were my family, part was my history. You know, I think that a filmmaker needs to put part of him in what he does, right? So I mean, I bits of me and my people and my family and my friends and people that I met in my life there. Even though I left Romania when I was pretty young, I was 28. Are represented in his characters, and that's why probably those characters are alive, and they have their own lives, because those are the lives that I knew of.
Right. Well, again, like I said, I think it's great that in what is a classically told epic story, that you're also able to interweave all that complexity within it. Without without us seeing the masking tape, as they say, right?
Thank you.
Very well done, Andrei. Again,
thank you so much.
The film is So What's Freedom. We've been talking to the director, Andrei Zinca. The film is screening at SEEfest LA, the Southeast European Film Festival. Yeah, I could talk for an hour on this film with you. Andrei, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.